In the ancient, turbulent times of Israel, a land plagued by invaders and surrounded by enemies, history whispered the name of a man most have never heard of. His name was Shamgar. His legend? A single verse long. Yet more powerful than most entire chapters, Judges chapter 3, verse 31. One line. After Ehud came Shamgar son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He too saved Israel. 600 men, not with a sword, nor an army, but with a farmer's tool. An ox goad. While history celebrates its kings and prophets, it often forgets the nameless faces who risked everything for their people. Shamgar is one of those faces. A mystery wrapped in silence, his story raises questions that theologians and historians still debate today. His father's name, Anath, bears a striking resemblance to the Canaanite goddess of war. Some scholars suggest Shamgar might not have been an Israelite at all. Could he have been a mercenary? An outsider? Or a man who crossed enemy lines to defend the very people who may have once shunned him? And why the ox goad? Of all things, a simple farming stick turned into a weapon of mass resistance. Perhaps it was the only thing he had. Or perhaps it symbolized something deeper, that in the absence of swords and spears, even ordinary tools become deadly in the hands of those who fight with faith. His silence after the battle is equally haunting. No songs, no celebrations, no legacy etched in stone. Shamgar vanished into history, but his act of bravery echoes in the spaces between the verses. There's a timeless lesson in Shamgar's forgotten victory. It reminds us that heroism is not reserved for the famous, the mighty, or the privileged. Sometimes, the greatest acts of valor come from unknown men and women standing alone in fields, armed with nothing but what they hold in their hand and what they believe in their heart. The 600 Philistines Shamgar faced weren't mere numbers, they represented oppression, cruelty, and the weight of a nation's despair. With every strike of his ox goad, Shamgar wasn't just defending himself, he was striking a blow against tyranny, making a statement heard across the ages. When injustice rises, even a farmer can become a warrior. His story is a challenge to us all. What battles lie ahead for the ordinary heroes of today? What ox goads do we hold in our hands, unknowingly capable of changing the course of history? Shamgar may have walked alone that day, but in spirit, he marched with every soul who ever dared to defy the odds. When we think of biblical heroes, our minds wander to names etched in glory: David, Joshua, Samson. But deep within the folds of sacred scripture lies a single line about a man history barely remembers: Shamgar, one verse. 600 enemies. One farm tool. And a story that should have died in silence, yet here we are, still speaking his name. Consider the Philistines of that time, warlords armed with iron blades, riding chariots into battle, enforcing their cruel rule over the Israelites. And yet, a farmer. Perhaps a common herdsman, gripped by a sense of duty so fierce that he stood alone against impossible odds. And his weapon? An ox goad, a crude staff tipped with iron. Meant to herd animals, not slay men. But sometimes history is written not with swords, but with what the hand can hold, and the heart can wield. Shamgar's stand wasn't just a battle. It was defiance. A statement. That when faith burns brighter than fear, even a stick becomes a sword. Why would a man like Shamgar risk his life in such a hopeless act? It wasn't for fame, his story barely survives. It wasn't for fortune, he gained none. It was perhaps for something far greater: freedom. The Israelites in his time were paralyzed, ruled by oppressors and resigned to submission. It took one man, driven beyond breaking point, to remind them of their strength. An ox goad, roughly 6 to 8 feet long, sharpened at one end, was all Shamgar needed. Not because it was a great weapon, but because it was within reach. This tells us that heroism isn't about what we lack, but what we choose to pick up. And when he lifted that staff against 600 trained soldiers, he turned a tool of labor into a symbol of rebellion. A single spark igniting a forgotten people's courage once again. History may have passed him by, but for that one moment, Shamgar carried the fate of a nation in his calloused hands. Every ancient culture has its unsung legends, figures whose names are barely whispered but whose actions ripple through time. Shamgar is such a man. His story sits quietly between the blood-soaked victories of Ehud and Deborah. And yet, what he did was unprecedented. 600 enemies, without an army, without armor, and without divine intervention recorded in Scripture. No heavenly fire. No collapsing walls. Just one man's resolve. What if Shamgar's ox Goad was more than a weapon? Some traditions hint it might have been a sacred symbol of justice, or perhaps an ancestral relic passed down from defiant elders. Imagine the weight of history in his grip as he faced those Philistines.